So as a coach, you're working with your client on understanding this and interpreting this, figuring this out. So you're asking all of these different dynamic questions. And if that person doesn't know, they need to figure that out. So you're going to give them the tools to go and figure this out. So they can come back, work with you, and figure out how we strategize from there.
Okay, let's go.
Hi, this is Dr. Bryant. I just wanted to say thank you for tuning in for another episode of Coaching to Change. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your patience. I appreciate your support. I get a lot of different emails, get a lot of conversations. I get a lot of scenarios and situations. It's fun. I make this a hobby of mine. It's for me to help myself understand more and more about mental health. And then it turned into something of a passion where I'm able to have the opportunity to help other people. And the thing is, the more people I help, the more people that I work with, the more I'm able to utilize the skills that I gain. It just seems that it's very, very therapeutic for myself. And that has, it has opened up doors, has created friendships. I've expanded my skill sets outside of the United States, where I am actually now working with coaches in different parts of the country. And I'm hoping that will help expand and allow individuals to help others. And that is the goal. The responsibilities that we have as people is to help other people as much as we can, be kind to other people. If you see somebody that's in need, somebody who needs help, what can we do? But sometimes people don't know what to do. They don't know how to help somebody. And that is where coaching comes in. It's not always based on, like, my platform is mental health, and in addition to some other things that I'm trained and certified in, and I'm going to talk about that, but more importantly, sometimes people just don't know how to go about it. And so as a coach, you learn the tools of the trade, you learn the techniques, you learn how to communicate, you learn how to dictate, you learn how to take notes, you learn how to listen, you learn how to help that person graduate to the point of what they're trying to achieve. The interesting thing is that most of the coaches, at least I know the ones that I work with and train as a master trainer, is to make sure that they fall within the skill sets that they are accustomed to. Being a coach is just a tool. It's a method of being able to apply. It's an application. But you have to have some level of background and experience to be able to deliver that. So, case in point, not case in point, but an example is, if you are 21 years old, never been married, you're not going to be a coach of trying to help somebody understand, family, methods, marriage, coaching or something like that. It's not going to happen. If you're 18 years old and you come to me and you say, hey, Dr. Bryant, I want to be a executive coach, I'm going to turn you down because you haven't done anything yet. Now, if you were some sort of cryptocurrency genius and you got a portfolio that's outside of, through the roof, then okay, we can have a conversation. Maybe we'll talk about, cryptocurrency coaching. But the important thing is making sure that people have the skill sets in the background. That's what this is all about, related to, and then taking it to the next level. I'm currently talking to this individual. He contacted me. He stated that he has years of experience in real estate. And the other thing was real estate. I think he said business. I'm sorry, I don't recall. It was an older message. But, we take that and we have a conversation and we figure out what's a good fit. And then from that good fit, you learn how to become a coach, get certified, being able to get all the tools and learning all the techniques of how you can help somebody. Because in an individual who may be looking to want to get promoted or start a business or improve their marriage, be a better parent. There's so many different categories of coaching. You want to make sure you have the right coach that has the right background to be able to provide that level of detail. So I say all that because all of my, if you've been following me and you listen to me, my thing is I'm a developmental health coach. Okay. So being a developmental health coach, my platform is about mental health, but there's a developmental part in there. And that developmental part is related to, it's like a foundation of so many different elements that will I build you up. And I can't always build you up if I don't necessarily know where you came from. And mental health applies to almost everything. And actually, I even said that to the same individual who told me about his real estate background. I said, everything has some sort of tie into mental health, okay? But I also have a business background. Heck, I have an executive MBA. My executive MBA is, I have a bachelor's in business management. I've opened businesses. I've started businesses. I consulted on businesses. I consulted in Fortune 50, Fortune 500s, Fortune 100s, in all types of roles. So my business background, surprisingly enough, I know I'm always focusing on mental health, but it's pretty extensive. In fact, I would even argue that I should have been an executive business coach years ago. But yet, for me, the passion was mental health. But it doesn't exclude me from helping somebody who may need or have that background on the business side. But again, I still apply the mental part because there is a strong component of how somebody can perform based on how they think, what their decision making is, etc., etc. So for me, a mental health perspective is very important. It's very key. And that's why a developmental health coach, which is what I am, is we're going to tie that into the business and being able to understand what is it you're trying to achieve? What is it you're trying to do? And because of my business background, that's not a hard leap for me. A lot of people don't know that, my PhD is related to the technology. So my whole thing and then the years and years of my experience has been in technology. Those Fortune 500s that I mentioned, a lot of my work in my consulting practice was based on working in technology. I've worked in tech for many, many years. So, I have so many letters behind my name. I have a Six Sigma black belt. I have a business analyst certification. I got a project management certificate. Well, had. Some of these I'd never extended or I didn't maintain the required curriculum to keep it going. I let it expire because that's not the field I'm in now. But some of them, they still live. My Six Sigma still lives. My enterprise architecture still lives. So some of these things that I've been trained in, I still have it, but I don't apply it. But my client may be involved in that. My client may need me to understand or interpret what he or she is going through or is trying to do. So maybe my client has their own business. Well, guess what? Dr. Bryant's had his own business. I have filed taxes where it was in the, pretty significant. Let's just say that. So I've been there. I've done that. I've had my share of successes. So, it's important for me to be able to relate. And by being able to relate to a person, I can help them that much more. Considering that I made a living of consulting with small businesses, larger businesses, my own businesses, learning how to start it, how to shut it down, even how to sell it. These are all things, how to manage people. These are all things that I'm familiar with. So in saying all that, one of the most important components when you are doing business is leadership. I find it so interesting that if you can pretty much look at any type of organization, leadership is going to be something that's, I believe, is a necessity. So why do you need to be a leader is the question that I'm going to put out there. That's going to be the name of this podcast. Why do we need to be a leader? But the thing is, a leader of what? Is it work, family, friends? What is it being a leader? Is there a reason behind it? Is there a reason why we have to be a leader? People might ask that question. Why? It's a tricky answer because, not everybody's a leader. And direct leadership is the thing. So the question is, there's different layers. Are we talking about direct leadership? Are we talking about indirect leadership? And I'm going to talk about that. Is there a reason behind why we should want to be a leader? I may not necessarily say, hey, you know what? You have to be a leader, because that's not necessarily true. I find some of the people who are the best leaders are those who do not even wear the title. Some of us don't have that personality to be leaders. That's just not what our makeup is. But yet they may turn out to be some of the best leaders that exist. But, when you talk about being a leader, again, this is not necessarily has anything to do with your title. It's not about who's the CEO, who's the boss, who's the supervisor, who is the person that actually is the leader. That's not necessarily true. There's this picture I just popped in my head, and I love it because, and if I remember correctly, when I worked at this medical organization, my boss actually had this photo in his office. And I loved it because it was a true description of a leader. Most people perceive a leader as somebody who is standing in the back, pointing forward, commanding, delegating, etc. And that's one perspective. In fact, the military exists in that way. Your colonels and your generals and officers, they're always in the rear strategizing, and you got your grunts, you got your soldiers, the privates and the sergeants and NCOs, they're out there doing the legwork. That's one perspective. You also have the perspective where you could have a leader who's standing right out front, first to do whatever it is to be done. The person who's leading by example. So these different types of leaderships are definitely things that you have to take in consideration based on the culture of where you are working. That is what's important about leadership. You have to know when to adapt and when to apply a certain type of leadership. There is hundreds of books out there about leadership, hundreds of books. But one of the things to understand is interpreting the type of leadership and as it can apply to you and or your organization. So that's when I say leader of what? Is it work? Is it family? Is it friends? These things have a lot to do with how you're going to apply the level of leadership. Too much, not enough. You don't want to be too aggressive. Some of us who are A-type personalities, we could be quite aggressive. We could take the bull by the horn and run with it. But depending on the culture or the people, your response is going to have a lot to do with how you approach it. So you got to be careful. So as a coach, you're working with your client on understanding this and interpreting this, figuring this out. So you're asking all of these different dynamic questions. And if that person doesn't know, they need to figure that out. So you're going to give them the tools to go and figure this out. So they can come back, work with you, and figure out how we strategize from there. Now, I'm assuming this is based on maybe a plan. Is the client trying to get promoted? Is the client trying to adapt to a new culture, a new environment? All of these things is based on what you've already learned, based on your relationship with your client. As a coach, you also want to take into consideration the personality of who you have. I wish I had a coach years ago, because my coach would have told me, many times in different scenarios, I wasn't always Dr. Bryant, so it'll be like, Aaron, you need to slow down here, and you need to slow down there, and you need to, be patient here. I mean, there's so many things, so many directions, so many different ways, and things I've done wrong. And I'll be the first to admit it. I mean, I look back and reflect on my past, and, so many things could have happened a certain way for me, good and bad. But honestly, it would have been good. I destroyed it because I did not have a coach. That was just me, because I have the type of personality that could be considered aggressive. My type of personality could be considered threatening. And that's who I am by nature. And then when you add on other elements, and again, I hate to bring either politics or race and all that in, but that's a real thing. That's what we're faced with in today's society. So being a black man in a certain culture of work might be considered a little threatening, a little awkward. I mean, I'll give you an example. And I don't know if I can be sued for saying their name, so maybe I won't say this company's name, but it is a first-person experience, and truth of the matter is it did happen, but let's avoid the name. But this particular tech company, very big tech company, I had an interview for it, and I went in this interview. In fact, I was recruited. A headhunter contacted me and asked me to come down and in the Bay Area and go to this company and go after this opportunity. And the headhunter had a great relationship with the team that was hiring in this role, knew the person who was the ultimate decision maker, and we felt very comfortable that I had the skill sets to do the job. I go in and I killed it. I mean, the interview, I do interviews pretty well. And I do take a humble approach when I do my interviews. So I think that's one of the reasons why I surprised my bosses that later moving forward, is because that the person that they interview tends to be a little bit more than they anticipated down the road. But again, that's another story. But I did this interview with 3 individuals that's on the team, and did the final interview with the boss. And again, the boss actually acknowledged it in the interview how well I did and how much he liked me. And I literally thought, this job is mine. Not even a hesitation. And I don't think I've ever been more confident of thinking that I had a job. So I get the call from the headhunter down the road, and he tells me, unfortunately, I don't get it. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, I'm in shock. And so was he, for that matter. Because after the interviews, we obviously did a recap, a conversation. And I told him what happened, everything that took place, and the conversation. And he was like, oh yeah, this is, he was happy because he found me. So for him, this is a done deal. Unfortunately, I didn't get the job, but down the road, because the tech environment, especially in the Bay Area, California, it's not that big. If you worked in enough significant areas like I have, I've worked at Intel, I've worked at Wells Fargo, I've worked at a lot of different. I mean, I can say this because it's on my LinkedIn profile, but I've worked at various companies, and you get this knowing certain people. You go to the same conferences, and you get to know, and you run into people that might work there, especially some of the big ones, it's not too many of us, especially in certain fields of work. There's project management, data architect, it gets narrow, and therefore you start running into certain circles. So I find out down the road why I didn't get that job, and circling back to my point about leadership and race, was because 3 of the individuals of that team, which in all honesty was the entire team, by the way, did not like me because they felt that I was told it was my skin color, but they said it was because of my personality was behind why they did not hire me. And I found that to be odd, but I did find out it was related to my race. These three individuals all were the same race, and they did not feel comfortable with me being on that team with my particular race. But they hid behind my personality. They felt my role as a leader, they didn't agree with my style. That's what was said. So I say all of this trying to share that your leadership and how you perform and how you come across could be dangerous. And sometimes being an indirect leader may work better in your favor. And, some people are just not leaders. So can you learn to be a leader? Absolutely, you can learn to be a leader. If you couldn't learn to be a leader, we wouldn't have all these schools out there to teach you. I reflect back when I worked for the state of California in the public sector, and I remember when I got I think I was a manager, or maybe I was training to be a manager. I was trying to be a manager. I don't remember. The point is, they sent me to learn how to be a manager. So I went to supervisor 1A, supervisor 1B, manager 1 classes, and I learned how to be a manager. Now, this is a great example because it wasn't so much that I needed to learn how to be a leader or manage. Well, actually, let me make that clear. There is a difference, leader and a manager. There is definitely a difference, but that's another podcast. My point is that them teaching me on the various skill sets, it was because of the culture that we worked in. Public sector is much different than the private sector, and I worked in both. I've consulted in and outside of both. I know that better than anybody, and that's one of the things you have to take in mind. So that class, that training I went through, wasn't so much to teach me the ABCs of it. It was to teach me how to manage the things within that culture. So again, having to understand where you work is important to be able to understand on your capability of being a leader. And I say that so in addition to that, is there an advantage to being a leader? Is there an advantage? Well, again, you talk about the direct and the indirect. Is there an advantage to being a direct leader? Well, absolutely, because if somebody can see you and you're taking the different roles, you're taking the bull by the horn, you're taking on opportunities that nobody else is doing, you're standing out front, that could be something that you get recognized for, and that could put you on a fast train to a promotion. Again, depends on culture. It depends on that particular place where you work. Is that something they're looking for? We want people that step up and show us who are the leaders because we either have high turnover, we need that type of personality, whatever it might be. So advantage to being a leader? Absolutely. Is it a culture that may not want that type of deal? So you gotta kind of slow your roll. These are the things to think about. And if you don't have an A-type personality, there's nothing wrong with that. Most people don't. And you can still be a great leader. I find that a lot of people respect people that can perform without being told. People who can perform and people who get respect. Those people typically are indirect leaders. They're not a personality type. They're not out there, standing out front. They're not out there marketing what they've done. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. My point is that individuals who typically are indirect leaders can be just as good. Again, it's about the culture. It's about where you're working. It's about the receiving end from people and how they're, being able to identify and what they need to identify to get whatever it is need to be done. I can think of a specific person right now that has a responsibility that requires leadership performance, but has no title. Why? Because they deal with people on the outside. So, good example is a sales rep. There's leadership, skills all throughout being a salesperson. But you may not be the boss. You may not be the supervisor. You may not have any responsibility in the managerial or responsibility of any type of role such as that. But what you do every day is something that requires leadership skills. So I'd say all that because, I'm always trying to reference the responsibilities of a coach. And I want you to understand that as a person who's listening, if you're a coach or somebody who needs a coach, it can work to your advantage. It really can work to your advantage. And if you need just some guidance, you need a third party person, you need somebody to basically secondhand what it is that you're trying to do, achieve, accomplish, it doesn't hurt to reach out to somebody and get that additional insight, that additional guidance. It is an amazing opportunity to be able to know what direction you're heading, correct or wrong. I wish I had a coach. I wish I had guidance. I wish I was able to understand what I didn't understand back then. But now I'm in a position where I'm able to share all this because I've already went through it. Like I tell my kids, I made so many mistakes, so you don't have to do that. Maybe that's why I'm on this earth. Maybe that's why God has kept me around, considering everything that I've seen and done in life, where the odds would have been against me, and statistically I probably wouldn't even be here. However, I am, so I have to do what's best to be able to take all of that and share it with people like yourself. So I hope this was helpful. I hope that you got something from this. Again, just to summarize that, developmental health is something that I provide, but there's elements in every component of coaching. I do my best within the skill sets that I have, but there are coaches out there who have the same skill sets or different or any other capacity that they've been trained to do. My name is Dr. Bryant. I look forward to talking to you again. I'm always here. If you need me, reach out to me on all my social media platforms, including my website, DrAaronPBryant. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you. Thank you.